Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Dave, and this is the Chase to Summit Trail Talk podcast, where we talk all about fitness tech, wearables, GPS watches, ultra marathon running, and just about anything else that piques my interest because I'm selfish and I make this podcast all about me and not about you. Thanks for joining me today. I know it's been a minute. The last podcast I posted was back in July, I believe July 10th, which is actually my birthday, when I had Shervin Shares on the show. And honestly, that was just such a fun episode because I had a real human being in the studio with me that I haven't wanted to do another solo podcast. But I do recognize the value in a solo podcast. I like to keep it casual. I like to just talk. And honestly, it's sort of good for me to get my thoughts out there as I go through my notes. So apologies for rambling, by the way, but that's kind of the mindset behind these solo podcasts. So I am back, and today we've got a few topics to discuss. First of all, I want to talk about some Apple rumors that I've been seeing floating around the internet. There's some interesting features that are, may or may not happen. These are all rumors, but I do want to talk about them. I also want to talk about some really nerdy information I discovered from the Western States Endurance Race. It turns out they keep track of a lot of stuff using surveys at the race. And I actually posted a video about that today, but I want to talk about it on the podcast as well because I found it kind of interesting. And of course, we will talk listener Q&A today because I've got a whole bunch of questions from you, the viewer and listener, that I haven't covered yet. So we're going to go through those as well. Might take a while, so buckle up and let's get into it. Before we get to all that good stuff, I do want to send out a giant, huge thank you to the Patreon members and YouTube members that help support this podcast. If you don't know what that is, that's generally just a way for you, the viewer, to contribute a couple of bucks every month to help this show keep being a show. And not only for my show, but think about all of your favorite podcasters out there. If you really appreciate what they're doing, consider joining their Patreon because it really helps out creators like myself and others out there, especially when you're doing this as sort of a job, which I'm doing now, which makes me very uncomfortable. I also want to give a shout out to the merch store over at chasetosummit.com/shop. Once again, I still have a discount code rolling for the merch store. And surprisingly, I'm actually running out of Chase to Summit trucker hats. So head over there and get 20% off your entire order by using discount code LISTEN20 at checkout. That's LISTEN20 at checkout. And once again, that's only for podcast listeners. I don't advertise that anywhere else. It's kind of an exclusive deal for people who listen to the show because I want to, just a fun way of saying thank you. And it's 20% off your order. Okay. Before we get to like the real topics of the show, I want to discuss a few things that's happened to me since we've last talked in the last podcast. If you follow the main channel, you probably know about most of this, but I'm just going to assume you know nothing if you only watch the podcast or listen to the podcast. So first of all is the Vermont 100 endurance race. That was a 100-mile ultramarathon I was signed up for in July, and I haven't done this podcast since then. So if you don't know, unfortunately, that event was canceled. And the reason why it was canceled was due to flooding in the state of Vermont. If you're unaware, the Northeast, the New England area here in the USA, got an absolute crazy amount of rain in July. We got like 17 inches of rain, which is unheard of for this part of the country. And Vermont just took a beating in 1 week. They got something like it was like 15 inches of rain in 1 week. So huge portions of the state of Vermont were flooded out. And unfortunately, a large portion of that was right on the Vermont 100 course. And it felt silly even to think we could have the race with all the destruction to people's homes and properties up there. But I was still holding a little bit of hope. And I would be lying to tell you that I wasn't bummed when I got the email saying that they canceled. I totally get it, but it was pretty sad because I have been training pretty hard, way harder than I have, because, well, if we rewind time, I broke my toe for a while. I kind of took a dip in fitness when that happened because I couldn't really run or do cardio. I recovered from that, and then I just kind of hit it hard, and it was really cool to see the training pay off. Like on my Garmin, for example, I saw the VO2 max estimate actually trending up. So it was cool to see like everything I was putting in pay off. Unfortunately, the race was canceled though. But you know, it is what it is. And I felt terrible for the people affected by the storms up there. Of course, in Vermont, the race organization tried to do the right thing by, you could either defer and get a discount on next year's race. You could run another race that they offer in September. That's called the Vermont 50. That's a 50-mile race. Or you could run a different race that a lot of other race directors in the area tried to help, you know, people out who were signed up for Vermont and weren't able to run it. For me, though, I decided to sort of just abandon racing for July for kind of the summer and kind of do my own little personal projects. So if you've been watching the main channel, you may have seen a couple of but just vlogs from going off into the mountains. I had a really beautiful day on the Presidential Traverse, which is a really gnarly 19-mile route in New Hampshire. That's got about 9,000 feet of elevation gain and really incredibly difficult terrain. And I did some other mountains here, you know, in the Massachusetts region. I've been on the trails a lot. I've just been getting out there and like doing my own thing that wasn't an organized event. And honestly, it's been really nice to sort of paint my own picture and be, you know, in charge of everything. And it was cool to get out in the mountains and kind of reintroduce myself to that environment. It's been a minute. I used to be really into hiking and being in the backcountry and filtering my water and, you know, really going solo and being very aware of the situation. And I haven't had to do that in a while. So getting back out in the mountains has been really nice to just kind of reintroduce myself to this sort of, not danger, but, you know, that feeling of being in charge of your destiny. You know, if you break your leg out there, there's some element of risk and danger that's, I don't want to call it exciting, but it sort of is. Maybe that's why we do it. And it's just, you know, it's different than a race environment where there's checkpoints and aid stations. You're just out there. And especially when you're alone like me, a lot of times it's different. So it's been really nice. And I've got a couple of other projects in the mountains I want to do before the summer's completely over. Right now we are in mid-August, exactly mid-August, August 16th. And I've got a couple of things on the radar. I wanted to do something either today or tomorrow, but it's raining outside. I'm looking at a rainy, gloomy day out the window here. So I didn't tackle that this time around, but I might next time around. And that's going to happen very soon. And if I do, check out the main channel. Of course, I'll probably have a vlog about it because I love to document the adventures and, you know, have the selfie stick with me. It's a little bit cringy. Another thing that's happened, another notable thing that's happened since we last talked was the main YouTube channel hit 100,000 subscribers. And if you follow along the main channel, you may have saw I put a little silly video of me talking against the wall, just kind of thanking people. But I also want to do that here. That happened back in July. It's been awesome. I mean, this has been such a journey. The whole YouTube thing has been so crazy, just to the roller coaster of it, the excitement of putting myself out there. Being on camera is still something I'm not used to. But, you know, that 100,000 subscriber mark, it's just a number, you know, that you don't get anything for hitting that. You don't get anything for having 1 million subscribers, but there is some sense of reward and validation of hitting 100,000 subscribers and knowing people hit that subscribe button. They're interested in watching what you do. It means a lot to me. So if you're subscribed to the main channel, I hope you are. Thank you very much for being part of the community and being what the channel is and making it work and grow. It's been so fun to be part of. And as a quick reminder on the YouTube topic, if you haven't yet, also check out the podcast YouTube channel. If you're listening to the audio only version, there's also a YouTube channel that accompanies the audio version. So you can actually see me. You can see the wall behind me, my blue shirt. It's all real and I'm on camera. And if you're on the YouTube channel, you'll see it. If you're on audio only, you won't. And audio only is great. It's still there. I'm not getting rid of it or anything. I just thought it would be fun to have a video element as well. Also, you might notice right behind me here, I've got the 100,000 subscriber plaque, which finally showed up. Fun fact, it takes like a month to get one of these. So once you hit that milestone, you don't just get it right away. So it took me a little while, but I finally got it and it's hung up on the wall behind me, which is a lot of fun. And I'm very excited about it. Okay, that's kind of the banter I got for you. I mean, other than that, it's been kind of weird around here in the Northeast. We're kind of transitioning out of summer and into fall. And there's like certain days where it feels kind of chilly in the morning or at night. And then during the day, it's 90 degrees still, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So super hot during the day, chilly at night. And even, like I said, when I was up in the mountains, there was one day during the Presidential Traverse where it was like 32, it was like almost freezing temperatures. And my poor summer body had no idea what the hell was going on. So I was like wearing my rain shell to protect myself. So it was kind of interesting and kind of a reminder that fall's right around the corner. So a couple of bits of news coming up. So today, actually, I noticed this on some websites, kind of strange. So the brand Amazfit, I've done a bunch of videos about these watches. Sometimes they include me in the pre-release stuff and I have a device to test. Sometimes they don't. This case, I didn't get the thing, which was kind of a bummer because I'm kind of interested in it. Today, they released a Amazfit Cheetah Square. So this is a GPS watch or a multi-sport watch that is a square, kind of a square orientation, kind of like an Apple Watch. And the really interesting thing about it is it basically is an exact replica of an Apple Watch Ultra. So a big chunky Apple Watch Ultra, except Amazfit kind of squished it down into a really small package. It's only 25 grams compared to the Apple Watch Ultra, which is like, 60 grams? So considerably lighter than an Apple Watch. And it's also only 9.9 millimeters thick, which is crazy thin. That's a very small device. This device is going to come in at $229 here in the USA, which is kind of an interesting price point. It's waterproof to 5 atmospheres. And the build quality, I don't have one, so I'm kind of judging a book by its cover. But from what I'm seeing on the internet, on my computer here, is that it looks a little sus. It's not like made out of metal like an Apple Watch Ultra, but again, it's $200, so you shouldn't expect that. But usually with the Amazfit devices, they punch well above their price point when it comes to build quality. That doesn't totally seem to be the case here with the Amazfit Cheetah Square. So interesting. I'm going to buy one on Amazon like everybody else and hopefully get one pretty quick so I can review it for the channel. So stay tuned for that. That's not going to happen anytime soon relating to this podcast, but hopefully I can get one within the next couple of weeks and that would be nice. The other piece of news I want to talk about and sort of the brunt of the news for this episode of the podcast is Apple Watch rumors. I love Apple Watch rumors just like everybody else. I love Apple rumors in general. So I will listen to podcasts about it and read articles and blogs and stuff and about the iPhone and Macs and everything. Now, the Apple Watch in particular, I find very interesting because the Apple Watch Ultra came out last September. It's relatively new still. And I'm just wondering if any of this is actually true. So allegedly, I don't actually know the source that I got from this information from. There is a rumored Apple Watch Series 9 coming soon and also a rumored Apple Watch Ultra 2 coming soon. And that Apple Watch Ultra 2, I don't know what to expect with it, but with the Apple Watch Series 9, I'm going to just speculate and guess here that it's going to be sort of like an iteration and nothing major. It's not going to be a very exciting release. It's probably just going to be like a new chip, maybe a little faster. I bet they don't even change the body or the design. It's probably going to look very much like the Apple Watch Series 8. The Series 9 will just have new internals and kind of get it up to current day standards, I guess. Now with the Apple Watch Ultra, the second version, whatever that may be, Again, I don't know anything. Apple hasn't told me anything, so I'm just kind of speculating and guessing what they're going to do here. I'm wondering if they're going to do a different size, because I think that big, I mean, it's not that big when you compare it to, big sport watches, but I think that form factor is kind of a turnoff to some people if you've got smaller wrists, and maybe they haven't sold as many as they might have hoped they would sell. And maybe in that case, they're going to go to a smaller footprint. I kind of hope they don't do that, because I really want the Apple Watch Ultra to be the Ultra watch from Apple. And I'd rather they actually go bigger and thicker to jam a bigger battery in there to make it more of that Ultra. But I don't think they're going to do that. They might, but I don't think they will. There is a couple of features that are rumored right now. Again, purely rumors. Apparently, the new processor that they're going to jam in these new Apple Watches will be more efficient. And by that, it'll get more battery life. So they're going to get a more efficient processor, probably a smaller, process when they make the chip or the die. And because of that, it'll be more efficient, thermally efficient, and it won't generate as much heat. And because of that, it won't take as much battery life. And so hopefully in the same form factor with the same battery physical size, we'll get more battery life. I don't know how much more we can expect from that, but that would be a thumbs up for me, because I'll take whatever I can get. The second, a more interesting rumor that I've read is that they may bake in satellite communication into the new Apple Watch Ultra 2. And if you're unaware, so on the newish iPhone 14 Pro, they put in a feature where you can communicate with the outside world without needing a cell phone tower nearby. You can simply dial 911 or whatever. And if you don't have a cell phone connection, you can kind of wave your phone at the sky. There's an animation that will pop up on the screen and guide you to how to angle your phone to get the best reception. In doing that, it will allow you to communicate with a satellite in the sky and send an emergency message to, 911, to emergency services, or to your family, or even just to share your location. As of now, on the iPhone, this is more of an emergency purpose sort of feature. Not something you can use every day. If you've got a bad cell phone signal, you can't send a text message using this satellite communication. It's really just for SOS, emergency purposes, and there is a byproduct of that in one recreational use case where you can use it sort of as a share your location with friends and family without a cell phone connection. However, the rumor I've read online is that the new Apple Watch Ultra 2, the version 2, whatever they call it, may have this feature built into the watch. So if you're out on a long hike, you don't have cell phone signal on your watch, and you break your leg, you may be able to call for help using just your watch, even if you don't have your phone. I think that's a really cool feature. I hope that we can get to a point someday with these features similar to like the Garmin InReach, where it's more recreational. So I can use it for, just going for a casual run. I can share my location with my wife or send a text message in the mountains when I don't have service. Because, there's a lot of times where I'm in the backcountry, off grid, kind of hiking areas, and I want to just say, hey, I'm running a little late to my wife. And I can't do that with the iPhone or even this new feature on the Apple Watch if it's the same as the iPhone. Where on something like a Garmin InReach, you can do that. You can send just a I'm okay message, I'm running late kind of thing. It's clunky. It's not as pretty as the iPhone interface, but it works in that capacity. And I'm just waiting for somebody else to do that, because the day that comes is the day I can absolutely leave my phone behind and just go for a long run in the mountains with my watch. And I think that would be super cool, but we're not there yet. However, I do have high hopes for this feature with Apple. They are such a big company. They have tons of innovation, and hopefully they can sort of push that needle forward towards that end goal. So that's all of the Apple rumors I have for now. I've got two more rumors here that are both from the Garmin camp. Again, these are totally unsubstantiated speculation, guessing. I've read them through forum posts and Reddit and stuff like that. So they may not even be real, but some of these people seem pretty confident. And one of them does seem fairly real. So I did read on a website, again, I forget the source here, sorry, that there's a potential Garmin sensor that's been approved by the FCC, the regulatory approval. And usually when it goes through that process, it's an indicator of a new product that's coming. Allegedly, this product will be called the HRM Fit. And if you're aware of the Garmin lineup, all of the products that start with HRM are heart rate monitors. Duh. But this may be different. So the speculation, the guessing here, the rumor is that Garmin is going to release a heart rate armband similar to what Coros just did. So Coros, if you're unaware, they released a sort of gray strap that goes on your bicep that takes your heart rate and reports it back to your watch so you get better accuracy. And I could see Garmin doing that too. It would be very interesting, especially if it could provide additional metrics like their chest bands do. So the Garmin chest ECG sensors, they can report back like running power, running dynamics, your ground contact time, your left-right balance while you're running. And if they could get an armband to do all that stuff too, which I think would be pretty hard, especially with like the balance, I think that would be pretty cool, especially if it's somewhat affordable. Typically the armbands are a little, they're fairly affordable, and that would be kind of cool. So that's what it could be. Again, totally a guess. And I am wondering if it'll be an optical sensor like all of the other armbands out there, like the Scotia Rhythm, the Polar OH1 or the Verity Sense, and the new Coros armband. They're all optical sensors, which is kind of like the green light you see on the back of your watch. It's just worn on your bicep. Where the chest sensors that you see out there, like the Garmin HRM Pro and the Pro Plus, are ECG sensors. It would be interesting to see if they do ECG up in your arm. Again, it's a rumor. I don't know. And the final rumor I have for you is going to be the Garmin Forerunner lineup. So apparently, this is, again, I'm going to keep saying the word rumor, but this is something I saw in a few places, and it's that the Garmin Forerunner 55 is sort of at the end of its life cycle. And if you're unaware of what that watch is, it's a $200 entry-level watch from Garmin. Still a really good watch, but it's affordable. It's at the lower end of the Forerunner lineup, which is designed for running. It's got a lot of the older stuff, like the older heart rate sensor, the older GPS chip, and it is ripe for an upgrade anytime now. And I suspect, along with others on the internet, that is going to be probably one of the next two upgrades coming from Garmin, the next new releases coming from Garmin, which would be really cool to see another affordable watch out there, hopefully with more features this time. But again, purely speculation. I have no details at all. In the final thing, before we get to the Q&A, I thought this was really interesting. So this isn't tech news or anything, but if you're aware of the Western States Endurance Race, that is a 100-mile ultramarathon that takes place out in California. It starts in the Tahoe Lake area region in Olympic Valley. It travels southwest to a place called Auburn, California, to a high school track, and that's where the finish line is. This race is iconic. It's probably the most famous ultra in the United States of America. People travel from all over the world to go there. It's very competitive. The top 10 men and women that run it are absolute elite, incredible athletes. And I personally was able to travel there a year ago with Hoka and see it for myself. And honestly, it was like an eye-opening experience. And now I really want to run it. If you know how to get me in, let me know. But I only have one ticket. Now, if you don't know how the Western States works, they have a ticketing system and a lottery system where you have to run a qualifying race and you get one ticket for running that qualifying race. So for me, I've got one ticket because I've only run one qualifying race, despite I've run a bunch of races, but only one of them have been qualifiers. There's other people out there that run they have 60 tickets and they finally get into the Western States. And in 2023, there were 7,000 applicants with a combined 41,000 lottery tickets. And you can only have 370 people run the race. So as you can see, the odds of getting in are pretty low. And I say all this to preface the other information I have about this, and I just posted a whole video about this today. The Western States Endurance Race, when all of the runners come in, they do a survey of every single runner, and they publish the results from the survey after the race is over. Now, this survey has things like, what shoes did you wear? What socks did you wear? Did you have a coach? How old are you? How many hundreds did you run before this? How many tickets did you have? A whole bunch of questions. But one of the questions that I find most interesting, other than like hydration packs and shoes and stuff, is they ask what brand of GPS or running watch you wore for the race. And I didn't even know they were doing this up until this year. I noticed it on the survey form. They actually started asking this question in the survey in 2019, which makes sense because running, GPS watches became much more popular and, attainable. So they started asking that in 2019. So the results are really interesting. And again, I posted a whole video on the main channel about this today. So go check that out if you want to, really get into the nitty gritty, but I'll boil it down into like the 2-minute version. So if we look back in history to 2019, in 2019, Garmin had the biggest, the most, it was the most popular watch at the Western states. And I think like 50% of the runners were wearing a Garmin, which makes sense. They've been a big brand for a while. And then in second place was Suunto. They had like 90 finishers wearing Suunto watches, which made up like 30 something percent of the total, field of finishers. And in third place was Coros, but not by a lot because they only had 15 people. There were only 15 people in 2019 that were wearing a Coros watch at the Western states. And I just found that fascinating because you look at Coros now and how they've changed, and it's dramatically different. So if you put that historical data aside, so, the biggest chunk was Garmin. You've got Suunto in second place with a pretty sizable portion of the runners wearing Suunto, and then Coros, like almost no one wearing a Coros. Now you look at this year's race where Garmin, again, has the biggest piece of the pie, and it's actually grown. So almost 60% of the finishers were wearing a Garmin watch when they finished the race. In second place, however, was Coros, with a huge amount of runners finishing the race. There was like 90 people. 90 people finished the Western states wearing a Coros watch. That's almost 30% of the runners. And in third place is Suunto, with only 7.2% of the runners, or 22 people, wearing a Suunto watch. So from looking from the year 2019 to those, what brands were hot and exciting in the ultra world, to today, things have changed so freaking fast. It's just astonishing to me to see how Coros crept up the ladder so fast. They were relatively new. The company I think they hit the ground in like 2016 or something, and they've just gone through the roof. And I think that's happened due to their marketing. They lean heavily into the ultra running world in the community. They have sponsored athletes. They sponsor races. They collaborate with other brands that are like-minded. And they've got, people like Hayden Hawks, Kilian Jornet, all these big names wearing a Coros watch. And that's paid off in dividends for them in popularity in the community. Not to say the marketing's everything. I think Coros watches are awesome, and specifically awesome for ultra running because they're kind of a no frills. They've got frills, but not an overly complicated amount. They're kind of a tool for a job. They get the job done. There's tons of battery life. They check all the boxes, and some of them are pretty affordable, which makes them very attainable. And in my experience, very reliable. So I see why they've crept up the ladder, but I do think it's mainly their marketing that's made that happen. Where Suunto has just fallen so far behind in terms of popularity, according to this, research or this survey from the Western states, with only 7.2% of the runners wearing Suunto. And that makes sense as well, because Suunto doesn't do a ton of marketing. They have some sponsored athletes, but it's not like something they promote all the time. And they haven't really released anything new and exciting in a while. With that said, they just released the Suunto Vertical like last month. And the Suunto Vertical is a total beast when it comes to battery life. And I think the Vertical will definitely help their cause next year on the next survey that the Western States publishes. I bet Suunto steals back a little bit more of that pie, but that's all dependent on what the other brands do between now and then. A lot could change. And the reason why I bring this up and why I posted a video about this is because I think this tells a story, mainly because of the people wearing these watches. If you're going to the Western States, you care. You've invested a lot of time and energy into training, running qualifying races, entering the lottery, meticulously choosing what gear you're going to bring, what shorts you're going to wear, what shoes you're going to wear, what shirt, what vest, what hat, and of course, what watch you're going to wear. So I think the fact that so many people are choosing these brands is a pretty bold indicator on where the market stands right now. And I bet it probably aligns with, how many units are being sold by each of these brands, respectively. The pie chart is probably similar to the sales from all of these brands. It is important to remember that this is an ultra marathon, obviously. So things like battery life and navigation and mapping are very important to these people. And that's why they're buying these products where, if this was a 5K or a marathon or something, you would see more Apple Watches in, other brands out there. But I do find it kind of interesting that, another brand missing from this whole survey statistic thing is Polar. Polar watches are just not present at all anywhere in the statistics. And I thought that was kind of interesting because you could actually, you get 40 hours of battery life out of a Polar watch, out of one of the nicer ones. But apparently people don't wear them to the Western States. So kind of a ramble. I just thought that was really kind of a cool survey. And I wish more races did that so we could kind of aggregate all this data and put it into a bigger picture to understand, how popular things are. And on that note, maybe even break down what models people are wearing. I think that would be really cool too. But we don't have that information yet. And I'm sure it's a pain in the ass to actually collect that information. Okay, that's all the news in fun stuff. Well, it's all fun, but we do have listener Q&A, and we've got a lot of it. So if you're new to the podcast, I do a section at the end of most of my episodes where I take listener Q&A, and the way I collect this listener Q&A is over on my Instagram page at Chase the Summit. So if you go over there, I will post an Instagram story. And in that story, you will see one of those little question boxes where you can type in a question and send it to me. I take those questions, I aggregate all of it into a list. I read them live on the podcast, and then I react to them and try to give you my best answer. A lot of them are really difficult. Some are very easy, but I do my best. So if you want to be part of the podcast and have your question featured, follow me on Instagram and keep an eye out for that story. And if you don't want to do that, follow me on Threads where I do the same thing, and you can see, the threaded replies. I'll copy them from there. Instagram. And if you just want to send me a question, you can also DM me on Instagram, or you can send me an email if you don't have social media to using the form on my website. Go over to chasesummit.com, click that little contact button, and type your question in there. It'll be sent to me, and I'll include that as well. So a lot of ways to get your questions in here. With all of that out of the way, I keep checking to make sure I'm recording. That would be really unfortunate if I wasn't. Let's take the first question. This is from CS Parker 84. He says, or he or she says, if I don't have a cell phone signal, will my maps still work on my Garmin Fenix 7? Quick answer, yes. Long answer, if you don't download them ahead of time, they won't work, but they come pre-installed on your watch. So as long as you don't do anything to delete them, you're good. If you decide to leave the country and use the maps, you'll need to download new maps. So just keep that in mind as well. But out of the box, you don't even need your phone near you. It's all installed internal to the watch storage. Next question from Dimitri Bonds. I think I said that right. I wish you the best on your channel. You've helped me pick a Garmin Fenix 6 and motivated me to run more. Hey, thank you. Not really a question, but thank you for the kind words. Next question is from David Liu 28. Which watch are you currently wearing? Well, at this very moment, you can see it if you're watching on YouTube. This is a Garmin Forerunner 965. It's kind of become my go-to lately. I like the size. I like the form factor. I actually put a screen protector on it because this is Gorilla Glass. And if you watch some of my review videos, I kind of complain that I'm afraid of scratching it. And that does happen. The screen protector makes it look a little worse, but hey, it's protected. So to answer your question, the 965 is on my wrist right now. Next question is from Ultra Hiller. Have you heard anything about a new Polar Vantage V3? I have not. And if I did, I wouldn't be able to tell you about it, obviously, but the fact I'm reading your question says that I haven't. Honestly, your question makes me want to go search the rumor forums and Reddit and stuff and see if other people have heard about it, because I haven't. So it's been a minute. They're due for an upgrade. I think their update cycle is typically 2.5 to 3 years, and we're creeping right up to 3 years now. So I would expect it probably within the next few months. But again, I know nothing about it. Hopefully, because Polar's been pretty quiet lately. The next question is from Jamardio. JJ Madiro? Yeah, we'll go with that. Which do you prefer for running a 100K ultramarathon? The Chorus Apex 2 Pro or the Garmin Forerunner 965? They both get the job done. This is going to boil down to personal preference. At a 100K, you're going to run that, 12, 14 hours, depending how fast you run, if you're middle or front of the pack, depending how hard the course is. Both watches will easily last that with their batteries. I wouldn't worry about the 965 if that's a concern for you. It will really boil down to what kind of features you need. If you want the real full-blown mapping experience, that's going to be on the Garmin. Chorus has mapping, but it's not routable, so you can't do any on-the-fly routing with it. You can use it to navigate, but it's not as comprehensive as the Garmin stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer that question. It's gonna come down to you. If your gut is telling you to go with a Chorus, if you like a simpler device, if you just kind of want to get out of the way and be sort of a tool that gets the job done, go for the Chorus. If you're not into gadgets and frills and stuff, where the 965 prides itself on having a really bright, vibrant display. It's got a whole bunch of wellness features, and it's a lot more than just a tracking device. So I would say it like that. Next question comes from Torbjorn HB, a Patreon member. Thanks. Shout out. Ever thought about reviewing things like treadmills? Yeah. So if you go back on my channel a couple of years, you'll find a lot of treadmill videos. The thing about treadmills is they become very difficult to review because they're so big and heavy and cumbersome. I would love to find a way to get a loaner treadmill just to do a month with and review it and then send it back. But I haven't found a way to do that yet. I have actually reached out to Nordic Track a couple of times because if you watch the channel, you may know I have sort of a sour history with them. I tried to see if they would sell me, a discounted new version of what I have, and I didn't get very far with them. I didn't expect that. At this point, I'm not going to buy another one. I kind of hate treadmills. I use them in the winter because it's necessary. But yeah, maybe there may be more reviews on them in the future. One thing I do want to do more reviews on is shoes. I got a whole bunch of shoes, and I'm thankful to the people at Hoka and at Ultra and all the brands out there that continue to still provide me with shoes to review. And I get to get back in that rhythm because they're a lot of fun. I enjoy them. I like the tech behind them. I feel like I'm not a good shoe reviewer because when I look at it, it's such a subjective thing. We all have different feet. I can't imagine being this is good or this is bad. So I'm always kind of in the middle on those things. So I'm going to try to work on being better at that. So stay tuned for that. He also has a second question. How excited are you on a scale from Suunto to Garmin, from 0 to 10 apparently, for the next Apple Watch Ultra? I'd say Garmin. Yeah, number 10. I'm pretty excited for it. Hopefully we see something soon. I really like the Apple Watch Ultra, and honestly, if I could get just a little bit more battery life on it, I'd probably wear it every day. I still wear it all the time, and it's really cool to just throw on for a run and have a mini phone on my wrist. But yeah, I'm very excited about it. Next question comes from James Phoenix 86. They ask, any inside advice for the upcoming Tark Fall Classic? So for those of you unaware, that is a 50K ultra marathon here in Massachusetts. It's actually pretty close to my home. And I ran it, I think I run it twice. I did it once without my wife and one with my wife. I've got a video about that over on the main channel. I'd say, inside advice, I'd say don't pack too heavy. There's a lot of support there. The course is well marked. You don't need a lot of like emergency gear and stuff. There's a lot of people out there. The aid stations are great. And, I would say try to leverage their food supply more than carrying your own food supply just to cut down on weight. I would say respect the hills because even though it's a pretty flat course, they creep up on you and it will hurt over time. So those are two tidbits I'll give for you. It's a great race. I love it. It's a lot of fun and good luck. Martins Barrett PT asks, build your dream watch from other watches components, for example, battery, case, etc. That's a great question. Oh man. Okay, let's go. I would take the case of the Garmin Forerunner 965. I like the form factor, the display size. I would keep the display of the 965, 1.4 inches. I would take the brightness from the Apple Watch Ultra, so 2000 nits of brightness on the 965. I would take the cellular connection from the Apple Watch Ultra and put it in my 965 so I can make phone calls and text messages and stream music from Spotify and things like that, all from the Forerunner 965. I would take, just for giggles, I'd take the siren off the Apple Watch Ultra and put it on my Garmin, because why not if we can do this? And I would take the battery from the Garmin Enduro 2 and put it in the 965, even though it wouldn't fit in the case. This is imaginary. So I'd get like 80 hours in a GPS activity in my 965. And finally, I would take the build quality. I would take the build quality of the Suunto Vertical. Yeah. I would take the build quality from either the Suunto Vertical or the Polar Grid X Pro. And I would smush that into the form factor of my 965. I don't want to change the aesthetic, the design, the look. I like the 965, but I would take the build quality with a titanium case and sapphire lens and put that in there. That's what I want. Does that work? Oh, maybe, you know what else I'd do? I'd put the scroll wheel from Coros on here too. Or the scroll wheel from Apple, for that matter, on the 965. But leave the buttons. So there'd be 5 buttons in a scroll wheel. But that's because I'm crazy, man. Okay, next question is from Justkins15. Any idea what's coming up next for the Apple Watch? We went through this in the rumors. I can't share too much more than that because I don't know anything. And I don't think anyone does. But yeah, there's just rumors at this point. So fingers crossed we get something exciting. Jeff Richards 07. What's your current daily driver watch? That would be the Forerunner 965 right now. Next question is from Hastenberg. What do you expect for the next Polar release? I think we're answering questions with questions. So I guess I would expect the Polar Vantage V3 would be probably the next thing they do. Maybe. Again, total guess. And hopefully, this is what I hope they do. They keep the build quality good, sapphire glass, maybe put an OLED display in it, and completely, Polar, listen to me, completely kill the user interface and start from scratch. Their user interface feels too old. It's starting to feel a little bit dated. I want to see something fresh and new and seamless. And when you scroll, I want it to be really fluid and fast, faster chip inside, all that stuff. And of course, all the stuff we know and love, like dual band GPS, good heart rate sensor. And maybe they could include SpO2 on this one because they haven't done that on any watch yet. Blood oxygen saturation would be nice as well. But yeah, that's just a make-believe thing, or what I'd hope they do next. The next question comes from Colorado Wild. Cool name, by the way. Do you carry an emergency device like a Garmin InReach or Spot for long remote runs? Yes, I do. So in my vlog video from the Presidential Traverse, I carried a Garmin InReach Messenger, and that became pretty handy because I left it tracking the whole time. So my wife was able to see where I was on the course and know how far I was from my car. So she knew when to expect me back home. They're great. It's a great product to have if you find yourself in the backcountry a lot. Totally worth the investment. The trouble with them is they have that subscription that is pretty expensive. And if you're not somebody who uses it regularly, they are tough to swallow the price, month to month. Next question comes from Krekens B. If you could choose any wearable from Garmin, if you could choose any health wearable from Garmin, Apple Watch Ultra, Aura, or Whoop, what would it be? Out of those choices, I really like the Whoop band. And I know it gets a lot of hate, probably because of the way they market it. I like the product quite a bit. The trouble with it is if you wear a Whoop band and you're like, a very active runner or cyclist, you're going to end up wearing another watch. And that's where there's like diminishing returns, because the Garmin, body battery, stress tracking, sleep tracking stuff is like pretty close to what Whoop is doing. It's just laid out in a different way and doesn't feel like as accurate in some ways. It's pretty darn close. And I have no scientific way of testing all of it anyways. I do like, if I had to pick between the two when it comes to that aspect, I do like the way Whoop does it better. But with the Garmin watch, you get all of the other stuff. You get, activity tracking, GPS and navigation and all that. So if you're only going to have one thing, then get a Garmin. If you only want like a wellness device to track sleep and stress and stuff, I'd say the Whoop band is pretty awesome. Okay, next question is from Gary Michael Templeman. And he asks, does Suunto's pledge to sustainability matter much when choosing a watch? That's really a question for you. I mean, that's a personal, that's a subjective opinion on that. I think it does, but you really have to value that, right? Like, how much is that worth to you when it's money coming out of your wallet? And for a lot of people, that's going to be not much. And, it is nice to say on the internet and in forums and stuff that you're into sustainability. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to clicking the, checkout cart button on the Suunto website, is that sustainability in the, all of their environmental stuff worth a couple of $100s to you? That's the question you have to ask yourself. I think it is. I think it's really cool what they're doing. I really appreciate the amount of effort put into their sustainability. And if you watch the videos they've put out on their YouTube channel, it's actually really impressive what they've done, what they're doing. And it's not just like a half-hearted attempt. They're a carbon neutral facility, and it's really impressive. So power to them. I just wonder if it's going to help sales. I know they may not care that much if it does or doesn't. They're just trying to do the right thing. But as the buyer, it's your money. So you have to decide how much is it worth to you when it comes down to that. It's a tough question. So that's the best I can do for that one. The next question is from Brian Lau. When's the next Cooper test video? I don't know. So if you've been watching the main channel, I did a Cooper test video where you run a certain distance and it can kind of calculate out to a VO2 max. It was a lot of fun. Video didn't do that well, but I still had fun with it. I don't know if I'll do it again. I might do it like personally to see where I stand. Since it looks like my VO2 max is getting better, I should probably do one soon. But I haven't done one in a while. Maybe I'll think about doing that again and keeping you updated. Thanks for the suggestion. Kyle MM, how did you get into running, specifically ultras? It's kind of a long story. So I wasn't much of a runner like my entire life. I was not an athletic kid. I was not really into sports or anything as a kid. When I got older, I was dating my now wife, and I had a history of like smoking cigarettes and drinking a lot and eating poorly, and it had worn down on me quite a bit. So one day I was like, not feeling great, felt kind of heavy, didn't feel healthy, wasn't sleeping great. I decided I'm going to go for a run. I ordered a pair of shoes. I did like a 2-mile run, which totally wrecked me, but I kind of got hooked by just the satisfaction of doing it. So I got more into it. And through that, I got into hiking. Hiking was a total game changer for me. I hiked like crazy. Every weekend I would be off on some, 20-mile overnight trip with a heavy backpack and big heavy boots on. And I hiked, I don't know, a couple hundred mountains, a lot in a couple of years before we had kids. I got really obsessed with it to the point where I was like losing friends because they were like, dude, you just want to hike all the time. And that was okay with me. And then one day I remember specifically being on a hike where I had my heavy bag and my heavy boots on and wearing like cargo pants and stuff. And this guy ran past me on the hiking trail with nothing but a running vest and trail running shoes on. And like a light bulb went off in my head, like, whoa, I could do that too. So I got into trail running, and then we ended up having kids. And the thing about having kids and loving the mountains that are kind of far away is that you can't go and do an overnight trip every weekend because you have obligations at home. So I found myself using trail running as a means to cover more ground. So something that would be a 20-mile hike that I would do a backpacking trip on, I started trail running instead. And really, I got into the longer distance stuff by necessity because I had a family at home and I couldn't be gone for that long. So I started trail running more and more. And I got, in a lot better shape from doing that. And then I learned about ultras, and that's kind of where that started. I started running ultra marathons, 50Ks it started with. After 50K, I told myself I would never run further than that because it was so hard. And just a year later, I was running 100 miles. And then I did another 100-miler. I did lots of 50Ks and kind of goes from there. So I have a very addictive personality, I think. And when I get into something, I can't just I can't like dip my toes in something. So I just went all in. I mean, just look at this YouTube channel. This is, again, with this, I couldn't just like dip my toes in it. I had to like buy the good camera, get the good microphone. Like that's who I am. And that's kind of what led me through the whole process of becoming or getting into running. Sorry, that was kind of rambly. Frank's carnivore mentality asks, having so many watches, how do you decide which one to wear on the daily basis? I wish I had a better answer for this. Unfortunately, what determines what I wear every day is really what I'm testing. I've only got 2 wrists. I don't want to wear things on my ankles and stuff. So if I'm testing a new watch, that's what I'm going to wear. Typically, I'll wear a Garmin at the same time. Right now, it's usually the 965, but it could be something else. And I'll wear that as like a comparison, like a baseline to have two data points. But really, it really boils down to what I'm testing at a given time. Mr. Coffee 3000 asks, which watch company has made the biggest progress over the past 1 to 2 years? Great question. That's going to be multifaceted. So I think Apple, in a lot of ways, has made a ton of progress. They've really changed the game with the Apple Watch Ultra. They increased the battery life. They made it more durable. They gave it sapphire. It's a big leap. So I'll give them credit for that. Other than them, I really like what Coros is doing. Coros, they put out hardware, but better yet, they put out firmware, and they put the firmware on everything. Unlike a lot of other brands, they will update older devices to give them new features, a year after you buy it. And I really respect that. Garmin has been getting better at that. And also Garmin's doing a lot with the AMOLED technology, like on the 965, which I do like. And Suunto, I got to give them credit for the Suunto Vertical. It's aggressive, it's expensive, but for what it is a tank of a watch. I like it. I don't think it's like a huge leap in technology or innovation, but I do like it, and I'm glad they did it. Now, when it comes to Polar, it's been quiet over there. So, I can't keep them in that equation. Oh man. I keep checking to make sure my thing's recording. Sorry. Okay. So Davo5286 asks, what running caps or hats do you recommend? Easy answer, the Chase to Summit trucker hat running hat. Link in the description down below. Just kidding. While I do love that hat, it's my favorite running hat. And I mean that in the most sincere way. I liked that hat from Boko Gear before I even had my own branded version of it. So that is my favorite hat. It just so happens to have my brand on it now. So I like that as well. Other than that though, I've got one hat from Hoka. I actually forget the name of it. That's a really thin material on top. It's white. It's got a reflective logo on the front. I forget the name and I don't have it with me right now, but I really like that one as well. And I think my third favorite would be Boko Gear, the same brand that makes my hat, has another model of hat that's called a tweener, Tweener, I believe. That's supposed to be like a bridge between a trucker hat and a running hat. I really like that one as well. I have one of those somewhere around here and I wear that as well. But I'd say my absolute favorite would be my Chase the Summit trucker hat. Not because it's just got my brand, just because I like the hat. The Insulin Junkie asks, "Hi Dave, can you help me raise my VO2 max?" I'm not a running coach. I'm sorry. I'm not a doctor. I can't really suggest ways to do that without knowing like everything about you and signing a waiver that I don't hurt you or something. I will say the most classic way to improve your VO2 max is to do hill repeats or intervals where you're getting your heart rate jacked up for a short duration of time or a long duration of time, and then tapering back off of it and doing that, strategically through the week. So doing like a hard workout of intervals one day, then maybe taking an easy day, then a long run day, and kind of rinse and repeat week after week. And I think doing that, you will see improvements. A lot of people fall into this sort of rut of just doing like the same pace, the same course every single time over and over, never leaving like zone 2, zone 3 on your heart rate. And when you fall into that rut, it's healthy. It's not bad for you, obviously, but it's hard to improve your cardiovascular system without straining it. So if you want to up that VO2 max, you got to stress test it. Again, not a coach, not anybody you should be taking advice from. Hell, I can barely do my own training, but that's what I understand. Okay, Mokhov Vladimir. Okay, crazy username. Thoughts on backyard ultras or 24-hour timed events? I love them. I personally haven't done either of those. I love the idea of the backyard ultra, like the community vibe, kind of it being grassroots, low-key, inexpensive. Lots of fun. I also really like the idea of the 24-hour timed event because you know exactly how long you're going to be out there for rather than, for example, a 100-miler, you may run a 24-hour 100 or it might be 32 or 35. You don't know until you do it. Where with the 24-hour, you're timed so you know when it ends. I do like that. I think they're cool. And if you're interested in them, go for it. I haven't done it firsthand, but I think it would be fun. The Jake Austin asks, do you have another Chase the Summit hat design in the works? I do, and it keeps getting backburnered because I'm so busy and I really want it to be what I want. I don't want to rush it and have something I'm not proud of. So there is something in the works. And to be honest, I am running low on inventory of current hat designs. So I think I only have like 30 left. I don't know how long that will last. So once those sell out, I won't even have a hat to offer. So I got to get my butt in order and get that figured out. The next question comes from Russell Morris. This is someone I actually graduated high school with. Do you ever get chapped nipples? What do you do to prevent it? I can't tell if you're joking, Russell, but I'll take you seriously because it is a real problem. Yes, I used to. No, I don't anymore unless I do something really poorly. But typically there's a couple of factors when it comes to getting like chafing on your chest. And that's going to be the shirt you're wearing, the material you have, how much you're sweating, and also how long you're running for. So if you have a real abrasive material, it's going to rub you raw, man. And so when I buy running shirts, I make sure they're nice and soft. There's no like hang points on them. It's not like a sandpapery feeling. And on top of that, I will use something called Body Glide. It's a body lubricant that you can put anywhere. I put it like on my shoulders when I'm wearing a running vest, my nipples, my armpits, like anywhere. Use your imagination where you can put this stuff. I will put it before a long run. Anything over 20 miles, I'm putting on Body Glide because I don't want to take a chance. I also put it on my feet, which is really helpful. And then on top of that, with like nipples in particular, it's useful to put tape or Band-Aids over them. They're very easy to protect with that. Although you do look kind of like the guy from The Office when you do that. So that's up to you to decide whether or not you can pull that off. Hope that was a real question from you, but if it wasn't, I just answered it anyways. Solange Marvey asks, how many GPS watches do you currently have and which are longtime favorites? Oh man, I probably have, I don't know, 40 watches on hand right now, maybe more. I haven't counted recently. I keep them kind of stashed away in drawers, like organized by brand and year and stuff. In terms of longtime favorites, it's kind of hard to answer that because with technology being the way it is, every year things get better. Sometimes they get worse, but in most cases they get better and better. So like the Garmin Forerunner 965, I like more than the 945 that came out 3-4 years ago because it's better in most ways. If I had to pick a favorite, like a long-standing favorite that I still like the aesthetic look and design of, a couple stand out for me. First of all, the first ever Garmin watch I ever owned, which was the original Garmin Phoenix, not Phoenix 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the Phoenix that came out in like 2010. I loved the look of that watch. It was super like rugged. It looked like a Humvee on your wrist, made out of metal and just felt really durable. And I don't know, there was something special about that watch when I got it. I felt like, man, I'm a real hiker now. So that stands out. And the Garmin Phoenix 5HR specifically. The 5HR was, no, not the 5HR, the 3HR. The Phoenix 3HR was the first Garmin watch to get a heart rate sensor. What? It was weird how it came out. There was the Phoenix 3, and then months later, they came out with the Phoenix 3HR. So the Phoenix 3 just had a metal back to it, and then the 3HR had the optical sensor on the back, and everyone's minds were blown that they were able to cram a heart rate sensor on the back of a watch. That was super cool. And the design of that watch stands out because it just looked really cool. It had like big letters, had a big robust design, and it was one of the few Garmin watches that got a domed sapphire lens. All these new watches, they have a flat sapphire lens. That watch had a domed lens, which like prevented it from reflecting light. So you wouldn't get like shot from, if the sun hit you in a weird way, it wouldn't shine in your face. You kind of see right through that sapphire. And I thought that was kind of cool. They don't do that anymore. So yeah, those are a couple of my longtime favorites. The next question comes from Feel the Need. What do you think of Parkrun? It's a huge free weekly timed run in the UK, and I think it would work in the USA. I think it's odd that it is not in the USA. I think it actually is in some areas. Like I remember going on the Parkrun website and seeing one in like New York City, in the park downtown. There might be one in Boston. I'm not sure how popular they are, but I think they're actually available here in the USA. I see it all the time on Mark Lewis's channel. I'm sure you've seen his channel. He always talks about Parkrun, and they look like a lot of fun. I wish they were more present. And it kind of makes me want to do something locally, like in the community, to get something like that together. CS Parker 84 asks, how many shoes are in your active rotation? Any plans to do more shoe and apparel reviews? To answer your first part of that question, I have about 4 actively used pairs of shoes. I would say 5s. So I've got the Hoka Mach X is one of my daily road trainers. The Hoka Rocket X2 is like my fast run, kind of going for PRs run kind of shoe. The Ultra Mont Blanc Boa is typically what I'm wearing on really long trail runs. That'll be 20 miles plus. I've worn that to a 100 miler. The Ultra Mont Blanc Boa in particular is so nice because of the Boa system. You can adjust really quickly. And my other favorite trail shoe is the Hoka Mafate Speed 4. I've been wearing that a lot. I use that on shorter runs just because the fit isn't like totally perfect for me. I can get by with a shorter run, but once I get into that like 50-mile territory, my feet start to hurt a little bit. And the 5th shoe I've been wearing is, oddly enough, this brand called Witten, which I bought like as a joke because it was super cheap, but I wear them as like my daily dad shoes for just like doing stuff around the house, being outside. They're super comfortable and they're like $35 on Amazon. So I've been wearing those around. I actually thought about making a review about those because of how odd they are. They're so cheap. But maybe I'll do that. Anyways, to answer the second part of your question, yes, there will be more shoe and apparel reviews coming up. To be honest, they're tough to do because, like I said, they're very subjective. And on top of that, YouTube has a way of making you feel bad when a video doesn't perform well. So, these videos take a ton of effort and energy for me. And if I dump 40 hours into like a shoe review and to only see it get like 1,500 views or something, it's like, it's really disappointing. So I need to find a way to make them, jive with the algorithm. It's just a learning experience. But yes, to answer your question, yes, you will see more soon. Next question. What? Siri's trying to talk to me. Go away, Siri. The next question comes from World Traveler. And it is it crazy to own both the Garmin Epix and Phoenix? Does TrueUp work well? Yes, that is crazy. But if you have the money, like, power to you. I can't blame you. They are both great watches for their own different reasons. And if you like, running with the Phoenix, but like living your daily life with the Epix, and you got like $2,000 to spare, yeah, go for it. TrueUp does work really well. The one catch is you need to assign a primary wearable. So if you assign it to your Garmin Epix, for example, and then end up wearing your Phoenix more often, it might confuse TrueUp and things might get messed up. But for the most part, I've got 35 registered watches in Garmin Connect, and they all talk to each other just fine. It works really well. So I love the TrueUp feature. It makes my job as like a YouTube person really easy. Hopefully that answers your question. Roy asks, is there much difference between the black DLC Phoenix 7X and the Enduro 2 black color? I think they're both DLC. The Enduro 2 might be PVD, and the difference between the two is like a chemical composition thing. From my understanding, PVD and DLC are both very, very durable, and you shouldn't have to worry about either one. But with my experience with Garmin products in particular and how they coat their products, I would say DLC has a better durability compared to PVD. PVD will scratch a little bit easier than DLC. That said, DLC does scratch. It's not invincible. And if you whack it on a rock or a brick or something, you're going to scratch the bezel. It's not invincible. It's just the way it is. So I would say they're both pretty similar. DLC might be a little bit better. Next question comes from John T. Matt. Would heavy lifting help my running performance? Again, not a coach. I think some aspects of heavy lifting will help your running economy and efficiency. Better core strength will pay off in dividends with running. If you do things like squats, if you do things like lunges, all of those, mobility type things with your lower body are obviously going to pay off when it comes to running. But how much, I don't know. I could say that, but I don't really do that stuff. My weight training and stuff is really limited to like body weight exercises. I don't do a ton of strength training. So your mileage may vary, but from what I understand, I think there is a pretty big payback if you can balance both. It just kind of depends what you're doing. Again, I'm not a coach, so I'm not going to recommend anything. Final question here from David has Insta. As time goes on, have you noticed a big difference between the new Garmin heart rate sensor on the Epix Pro and Phoenix Pro compared to the older one? This is a tough question to answer because it's hard to quantify better or worse with these, because with the 965, it has the older heart rate sensor, the Elevate 3.0, the 4.0 compared to the new one, the 5.0, I forget the numbers, but it's got the older one. It's still really good. Like in my testing, it performs really good. I know not everybody gets really good data out of these things. Like if you look at Rob's channel, the Quantified Scientist, he tests them at a real, scientific level, but he's also only one person. And the problem is we're all different. We all have different body fat percentages. We have different hair densities. Some people have tattoos. Some people have dark skin. Some have light skin. Some wear their watch loose. Some wear it tight. and all those variables add up. So a sample of one isn't really valuable. What I can say is that I never had any real issues with the older heart rate sensor, unless there was one caveat there. It was on a big watch. So like the Phoenix 7 51 millimeter, or, any of those, the Enduro 2 51 millimeter, any of those, they were pretty good, like in terms of accuracy, but I would get some wobbles here and there just because of the sheer size of the watch, and it shakes around a little bit on your wrist, and that can cause some variability or some inaccuracies in your data. But again, not like hugely inaccurate, just something I might have noticed here and there. On the new heart rate sensor on the Epix Pro and Phoenix Pro, I feel like that's kind of gone away. Like even the big one, the 51 millimeter, feels to be like just in the same ballpark in accuracy, about the same as the smaller ones. So they kind of bridge that gap with the new sensor. And I think they did that just simply by adding more light output, more LEDs on the back of the watch to provide more vision to the sensors. Again, I don't really know the science behind it, and I haven't really dived too deep on a deep level whether or not it's that much better, but it does seem a little bit better. Hopefully that's helpful. And with that, we have reached the end of the Q&A, and I'm kind of losing my voice now, so apologies for that. We've been on the air for like an hour and 10 minutes, which is quite a while, so I guess I will wrap it up here. One more time, I do want to remind you that if you enjoy this podcast, do a couple of things for me. Head over to the podcast YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, check out the video form of this podcast, give me a thumbs up, comment, say something. It makes me feel better about having a second YouTube channel that, is growing slowly. I would also really appreciate it if you head over to Apple Podcasts and consider leaving a review. You can actually leave a review about the podcast there. Give it 5 stars if I deserve that. Say something about the podcast, what you like, what you don't like about it. I would really appreciate that. I do read those and I check in from time to time. So thank you very much. And with that, I also want to remind you to check out the Patreon program where you can contribute a couple of dollars every month to the podcast and help keep this show alive, keep the lights on and the mics on. Really appreciate that. And the YouTube members program, which is also just a couple of bucks. And finally, the final plug for this episode is going to be the merch store. Check it out. Listen20, LISTEN20 at checkout for 20% off your order. I'll have a bunch of show notes down below if you want to jump over to any of the videos I talk about in this podcast. In any products, I'll have linked there as well. And I think that's the end of this episode. Thanks again for joining. I think this was episode 55. Holy smokes, 55 episodes. Thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.